Hello, hello. Hi, friends. I am coming to you live from my new office and studio. Today, I had my first podcast episode. I guess we'll call it season 2 of the In My 30s podcast. My first guest is my friend Charles Alexander. I've known him, I think, since I first moved to Nashville. Just somebody that I love running into around town. Super great guy and just so knowledgeable about all the stuff we're talking about today. So today's episode is focusing on AI and music creation. And he's really an expert. And the company he founded is called ViNIL. Their company helps authenticate media so labels and artists can prove what's real and what's fake as a way to protect their brands and their music and their creations. So I'm really excited to talk to him today. I'm recording, you're recording. This is recording. Okay, good. Yay!
You got it all, Miss Production.
In my 30s. Okay, welcome to the In My 30s podcast. Today's guest is my good friend, Charles Alexander. We're going to talk about AI and music and vinyl. So let's get started. I wanted to start with where you're originally from, how you came to the United States, got into what you're doing. And I read a little bit of your bio. So take us to the starting point here.
The beginning.
Yes.
So I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know, it's a very multicultural country. And I'm of Indian ethnic descent. And so huge premium placed on academia and academics. Mm-hmm. I've been a musician all my life. Like I started playing out with my cousins probably probably about 10 to 12 when I was like maybe 11 years old with my cousins, and we all played guitars, like not even in an arrangement. We all played the same chords. So
that was your family band, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly weddings and stuff.
Oh, okay.
And then when I was about 15 or 16, I started playing out in Kuala Lumpur.
Okay.
But I started writing at a very young age, like around 14, 15. And when I turned 16, like around there, this band came to my house and talked to my parents. Who am I kidding? They talked to my mother and they said, "We want Charles to join the band because we hear that he writes songs." And my mother said, "You are crazy. Leave my house right now."
How old were they?
The band?
Yeah.
Oh, they were all like much older. You know? And by older, they were probably like late 20s, early 30s, But yeah, I started writing very young. And then when I went to go to school, went through a couple of different iterations of that, but I ended up coming to the United States to go to college.
Right. Okay.
And so the stuff that was always really attractive to me in terms of academics was biology, especially zoology. And really, I had fantasies of becoming a zoologist and going out into the wild.
I didn't know
And
that.
if you know me today, you would just know how hilarious that is, because camping is not my thing. And so I went to this 2-year college, and the advisor there was like, "Let's check out what you can do in biology," And so he found out that there was this thing called biotechnology and that there were some schools in the United States offering that program. And so I ended up at the Rochester Institute of Technology, where I got a degree in biotech. But right before I graduated, the year before I graduated, maybe a few months before, this alum came through and said, "Hey, I'm leaving my position at the University of Rochester, and I'm looking for someone to fill it." And I said, "Great, so what's the position?" And she said, "I'm a biocomputing specialist." And for those of you who don't know, that was the era when the Human Genome Project was launched by the US government, and they were busy sequencing the human genome. And so there was all this data, and that data needed to be databased and managed.
Okay.
And so that spawned a whole new field called bioinformatics, biocomputing, computational biology, different names for different sort of focuses. And so she said, and I said, "I don't know anything about computing." And she said, "It's okay, I'll train you." And most of my colleagues or fellow classmates, a few of them got approached by the same alum, and they all said, "No, I just went to school for almost 4 years to get into biotech. This sounds like a waste of time."
Okay.
And I said, apparently I was the only one who said, "What have I got to lose?"
Yeah.
And so for me, that's an important demarcation point because I always find myself in these sort of two worlds. So computing and biology being one, and then music and data. And so when I got into biocomputing and bioinformatics, being a bioinformaticist, one of the things that I learned was basically how to get into data science and manage data.
Right.
And that has been a transferable skill all through.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of musicians, a lot of the time, have this like other side of their brain that's also engineering and And when we first met, I don't know that we bonded over it, but my brother is a computational biologist, and you were like, "That's what I did," and so that's really cool to me. And he was a drummer, and I feel like a lot of musicians are.
Math.
Yeah.
I'm not a good mathematician, just so everybody knows. But structure.
Yeah.
I think I thrive in structure to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And I just have this thirst for information.
Mm-hmm.
And that, when I went to school, was nurtured and became really obsessive about it. And so that is the data science part, as a result of being at least on the periphery of the Human Genome Project, is really kind of set my worldview around how I look at music, how I look at data, how I look at technology, and always trying to sort of walk that line of being the intersection of all that stuff. I think when we first met, our company was involved in streaming and all that stuff. And the reason that all worked for us as a company was because of the data science part. Because I was one of the first few in the town who went, oh, data. Yeah. They're looking at data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm so excited to have you here now, because I feel like you're always ahead of everyone else. And I, like, people like you, I'm like, okay, if Charles is talking about it, like, I can take it seriously. Because
not, yeah.
With AI, I mean, I feel like the climate in the industry has, I feel like people have calmed down a little bit. They're not as terrified of AI.
Depends on who you talk to. But
depends on who, I guess for me personally, I don't feel like I poked around on Suno. I made some songs and I was like, oh, this is like almost like having a teammate for me.
Yes.
I don't see this as a threat. I see this as maybe me releasing music as the producer and getting ideas, kind of ping-ponging back and forth with AI. But I don't see it as a threat because I don't want to see it as a threat. I don't want to be afraid of it. So I wanted to talk about your latest company, ViNIL, and you just celebrated year 3?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so walk me through how that came to be. And
so, we were in the process of looking and building this sort of data mining, data prospecting platform around music. So we have a sister company called Launcher, which is sort of, it is a artist services, label services, digital services company, which was an offshoot of the previous company that worked in streaming. And so we became this label services company because then we could be full service. We could talk to the DSPs. We could handle distribution. We could do all kinds of stuff. And so while we were working in that company, it became pretty apparent to us that, again, people were looking at data and it was very reductive the way they looked at data, in that if you got on TikTok and if you spiked, then labels would just run to sign you, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
Because it was a very simplistic way to use data analysis and say, oh, look, there's an audience here. We should sign them because they have an audience. Yeah. Right? And so for us, it seemed really simplistic and reductive. And so we looked at some of the other parameters that were affecting adoption and why these artists were blowing up. And so we came up with a really small set of about 6 to 7 artists that we were tracking. And then 5 of them got signed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that became the basis of us wanting to get into this data mining platform. And we began to build it. We brought on a CTO, Sada Garba. Just so everybody knows, there's sort of 3 principals involved in the company: Brook, Sada Garba, and myself.
Okay.
And so we were trying to build this thing, and we spent a lot of time explaining to Sada, who wasn't in the music business, but who had exited a company and had built a platform, about how the music business works. And Sada went, "That makes no sense whatsoever." And we said, "Yes.
You get it.
You get it."
Yeah.
And
That's so true.
we were talking about the stuff. And then while we were having these meetings, we would meet sort of every Friday at Indu, and in the conference room, and we would talk about this stuff. In the middle of all that, this thing, Hot on My Sleeve by Ghostwriter,
Okay.
which was a AI song that was supposed to be a collaboration between Drake and The Weeknd.
Okay, yes.
So this was April, I'm pretty sure it's 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2023, right? Everybody was losing their minds.
Right,
And
okay.
then I think it was me who got on Reddit and was like looking at stuff, and somebody on Reddit said, "This is the best song Drake ever wrote." He did it. And later on, like 6 months later or something, no, maybe it was 3 months later, we discovered that Drake and The Weeknd have beef. So this collaboration would have never happened in real life.
Okay.
But this ghostwriter guy had used, these really early AI algorithms and AI software to sort of train the model on Drake's voice and The Weeknd's voice. He wrote the song, like manually he wrote the song. It wasn't an AI generated song at all. And then he produced the track, and then he used the voice models with Drake and The Weeknd to create the song. Amazing song. And if you haven't seen it, it's still, I think, drifting around the internet to some extent. I think the song came out on a Tuesday, like it was on YouTube on a Tuesday, came out on streaming services on a Friday, and the following Tuesday, all the label heads involved with the Drake and The Weeknd or whatever were losing their minds about this because, it was illegal and really there's some debate that the name, image, likeness thing was definitely an issue. They could have sued over that, but there really wasn't content that was theirs. It was being repurposed.
Yeah,
it was the publicity right of their artists which is also illegal. But what was interesting was the only reason that one of the labels could shut it down was because there was a tag at the end by Metro Boomin, who is a UMG artist. And because of that, the streaming services could shut it down. But in the meantime, people were like, this is crazy great.
So because it wasn't actually Drake
Correct.
or The Weeknd, they couldn't actually pull it down just based on that. I actually never knew that. That's crazy to me.
So the only reason, the publicity right. So if someone takes the Emma White likeness and uses your picture or uses your video, and then they use it to sell something else,
right,
that's a violation of your publicity right.
Yeah.
Your name, image, and likeness. But those were the grounds on which that thing was taken down.
Wow.
And so what was interesting about that is, for us, that was where the dam was breaking. And then I think in the meeting where they were trying to take this down, and I think succeeded in taking it down, we had a meeting discussing our platform, which is the launch a data mining thing. And I just flippantly said, this is silly. Someone should just license their likeness. Let them license your stuff. Just do that. The guys looked at me and they went, someone should. So that's how we built ViNIL.
Wow.
Our initial approach was to license stuff to be a platform that would license the AI likeness of your name, image, and likeness as a revenue stream for anyone who wanted to do it. But pretty soon it became apparent to us that the real thing, or the real opportunity here, was what's going to happen if someone takes your voice, if someone takes your video, and someone takes your likeness or your picture, which we're seeing now all over the internet, and repurposes it with AI technology and creates this deep fakes, right?
I mean, I feel like I'm pretty good at detecting things, but lately I'm really not good at it. Like, I have to verify and
It's not that you're not good at it.
It's that they're so good.
That's right. The tech is incredible.
The tech is incredible, yeah.
And so and for us that was the opportunity. How
Yeah.
would we go about doing this? Because the immediate reaction of the market and the industry was, oh, we'll just take everything down.
Yeah.
Well, that's just whack-a-mole, right? So you take one thing down, and because the tech is so good now, there's like 100 that can come up the next day.
Right.
And so our approach was early on, when we sat and thought about it, was we need to preemptively authenticate content that's authorized. So if Emma puts out music or puts out a podcast or whatever, we need to fingerprint that content. And there's a subtle difference between fingerprinting and watermarking we can get into later. But preemptively fingerprint so people know that you actually authorized this and give them a mechanism to detect that fingerprint.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the only way you're going to be able to sort of differentiate if the creator or the owner or the rights holder of whatever content says, okay, we're going to fingerprint this stuff so the world knows that we own it and we are the only ones authorized to sort of repurpose it or to leverage it. Anything else you see out there that isn't fingerprinted by any, let's say, our platform or a third-party platform, then isn't something that you can trust. And we were on this about 3 years ago, right? Adam Mosseri, I don't know what you did on New Year's Eve, but I was reading Adam Mosseri's 20-page or 19-page carousel on Instagram saying, we don't know. We just don't know. The only way to make sure that we know is to fingerprint content. So...
And Adam Mosseri is the head of Instagram, right?
Right, the CEO
CEO of Instagram. Okay.
Right. So I think the industry or just the world in general is sort of migrating to that approach.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of anxiety and sort of awareness of the threat of the deepfake stuff because it can affect your branding, it can dilute your brand,
Your reputation. Yeah, everything.
Yeah, and as we know now. But there's just sort of this really interesting bifurcation of some people just see this as entertainment.
Right.
You know, is this something else to scroll through?
Yeah.
You know, and other people think this is an actual threat to the way we live. And for us, because we live here in Nashville, the beachhead for our tech is music, obviously, and that's who we've been talking to for the most part. But we actually think there are larger applications outside of music. So, for example, in digital advertising, in media. So if you're Paramount or if you're Amazon and you're ingesting content, then you want to be sure that whatever content you've ingested has been authorized at the source, right?
Right.
Because if not, now your platform becomes the distribution point for any kind of content, including deepfakes.
Right.
Same thing. And YouTube and all that stuff sort of has a content ID type thing that they have, but it's siloed inside YouTube.
Yeah.
And so our platform is sort of agnostic in terms of whatever platform you want to put your content on, but we can authenticate and verify video, audio, and images.
So if someone like me or another artist was to work with ViNIL, you're creating the fingerprint for me or you're analyzing a ton of data for me?
Right. True in both cases.
Okay.
So the first thing we need to do with you, let's just say you would, get on the platform, we need to verify that you are who you say you are. And obviously I know who you are. But the sort of the best practices for us is to have your identity verified. And we use Clear as the platform of choice.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you go through this initial process where we authenticate and verify that you are who you say you are. And then once that's done, then you can upload content at your leisure. And then we fingerprint that content. We don't hold on to the content. So we don't hold on to your audio file. We don't hold on to your image. We don't hold on to your video file, your MP4. We just keep the fingerprints. So it's very Shazam-like in that sense. We just keep the fingerprints in the media library. And then for video, if you use our Chrome extension and you look at a video on YouTube or whatever platform, that Chrome extension will ping our system and say, oh, this has been fingerprinted. Or it'll come back and say, this has not been fingerprinted. We can't say it's a deep fake. We just say we've never seen it.
Okay.
And then on audio and images, we are currently in the process of building an app that I think in about 2 weeks will be out. and then you can listen to the audio, or you can upload the audio file, or whichever, and then it'll come back and say, this has been authenticated and verified.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how is vinyl, because I noticed like you said, Instagram, like everyone is fingerprinting. If someone's working with vinyl and they also have Meta Rights Manager.
Yeah.
And because Meta Rights Manager is kind of verifying like, oh, it tells me, oh, someone else uploaded your video on their page, but they're not monetizing it. Decide what you want to do. Like, how does it interact with the whole world of other fingerprints?
Yeah. So the way Content ID and Meta Rights Manager works is that they ingest the file and then they just sort of flag it, for the most part, actually. Like even in YouTube video, for the most part, they're not identifying the pixels.
Oh, okay.
It's really the audio that they're sort of pushing through recognition.
Okay.
And, there are layers of Content ID, for example, that do that. Meta is sort of the same idea, same kind of base technology, just a different implementation. But for us, our platform, it doesn't matter where you put the stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the difference. I'm not sure about the Meta stuff. So the differentiation between watermarking and fingerprinting, I think, is a really important one. When you fingerprint something, let's just say it's a video.
Yeah.
You fingerprint the video, we fingerprint it. You don't have to wait for us to fingerprint or do anything with it. You can just distribute that video.
Yeah.
When you watermark something, you have to distribute the watermarked version. And there are sort of pluses and minuses to both. The issue with watermarking is you can strip the watermark out.
Okay.
Yeah. And so because the way watermarking works is they put in an imperceptible signal inside the audio file or a piece of noise or a low frequency thing that I don't think even dogs hear, because I think that's high frequency. But people don't necessarily hear it. And so that's the way the detection works.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to use watermarking to kind of go, oh, this particular piece of audio was used in this thing. And so you sort of have like copyright. You can do copyright tracking, but the audio file, video file, or image file would need to be the watermarked version.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Fingerprinting, it doesn't matter. Fingerprinting just kind of like listens to the audio or watches the video or looks at the image, detects the image and says, oh, yeah, we've seen this.
So if something came up that was fingerprinted by you and it was not authorized, what happens then for an artist?
Yeah, so there's sort of like two different workflows you could go from there. We're about to release a takedown mechanism. Basically sending an email or a notice saying, this was not authorized by you, you should take it down.
Yeah. And
that usually goes to the whomever is repurposing the content. So, and for example, in YouTube, if it's on YouTube, you can send it to YouTube, but YouTube kind of like acts like the middleman. So YouTube can't take it down until the content owner says, yeah, okay, take it down. And YouTube needs to have documentation in order to have that happen.
Oh, wow. So that could be a longer process.
It could be a long process.
Yeah.
And, you can do it at scale, but you sort of like have to tier it. So some things a tech company can do without the involvement of a lawyer, like if it's so blatant, so obvious. Right? And then there's other things that might be a little bit more convoluted. So like a common example is you're on a label and then you leave and then you put up new music that the label thinks it owns, but I'm out of the contract, so I'm good. That conflict, YouTube can't resolve that, right? You guys have to work it out.
Yeah.
And then whatever happens, YouTube will act accordingly.
Okay.
So in terms of takedowns, that's what everybody wants. They want you to basically go out there and toast every piece of illegal content that's out there on the internet. Some platforms do it, some platforms don't. We think a judicious, considered approach to taking down content is the way to go. Because if not, the sort of like First Amendment rights type of stuff that so for example, right, if someone uses a likeness of me and they put out a sort of parody, and parody is allowed in the U.S. Constitution, right? And they say this is an AI thing. Yes, it's a deep fake, but it's also free speech.
Wow.
You go around taking that stuff down isn't necessarily the way to go about doing it.
But it's also like what
Yes.
has more weight. Because regardless, I feel like things like that, if it's out there, and let's say it's a public figure, it's still going to leave an imprint in people who see it.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
It's like it does harm reputation. So is that defamation or whatever other?
I'm not a lawyer.
And like it just makes me think like which issue has more weight?
Yeah, no,
free speech or harming
right.
someone's reputation. I don't know.
Right, and I think the way
I'm just going to keep going down.
Right. I think the way to address that is to have a federal statute that addresses that. Right. So there's sort of legislation that is in Congress right now, but right now it's all like did in committee. So like no fakes is one, and that's that's a Marshall Blackburn thing, and then there's a couple of other pieces of legislation. But in the state of Tennessee, we have the Elvis Act that is exactly supposed to protect you from these kinds of things.
Yeah,
and so I'm not sure what has been litigated or who has used it as a tool. I think there might be one or two cases, but I'm not completely familiar with it.
And wasn't Tennessee the first state to have any type of protection like that?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
But since then, there have been other states like Illinois has one.
Okay.
I think Nevada has one now. California just has started the process or has finished the process.
Okay.
New York is starting a process to kind of make that happen. But usually a lot of the states with entertainment and advertising are sort of looking into it.
Okay.
Iowa? I think Iowa.
Okay.
Maybe? I don't know why. Oh, no, Indiana.
Okay.
Yeah, because sports.
So did want to ask you what kind of artists can work with you? Like if anyone's listening that's an artist, like, is this for major labels, indie labels?
Anybody who wants to work with us can work with us.
Okay.
And so, we're at the point now where we're looking for adoption. So if you have concerns, or even if you don't have concerns about the way your IP is being used and you don't want it to be misused or abused, then you can use this as a platform. So we have Pistol Pearl on our platform.
Okay.
Yeah. And then she's sort of been our first use case. And it's really interesting because she actually has a real name and a real, she's had a career before this. And then now she has a alias, or basically a nom de plume. And so it's been really fun to kind of, because people are going, wait, is this really you? And so we can authenticate and verify that it's really her.
And you're verifying that it's her new alias?
Yes. Right?
Okay,
that it's owned by a specific person.
Got it.
Right. So, so that people can go, oh, okay, this makes sense. As opposed to, this is just another fake.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Again, I feel like you're always like ahead of the curve on these things.
Yeah, it's nice to be ahead of the curve, but sometimes if you're too early, it's just as being too late,
Yeah.
But I think the fact that we started thinking about this 3 years ago has really sort of helped form and formulate direction. And in some cases like this, be able to offer some guidance.
Yeah.
It's a new thing. And, when I was in bioinformatics, we used machine learning to do some things, right? But the hardware just wasn't there. We didn't have the computing power. And if we had like 3, 4, 5, 6 elements or parameters or vectors to deal with, that was a lot. Now it's like millions of tokens that people can use, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we were talking about video before this whole thing started. There's this new model called CDance 2.0 that came out about 2 weeks ago, and it freaked out Hollywood so much. And CDance is a video model that was created by ByteDance, the same people who own TikTok.
Okay.
And so it was so good. There was this Kanye fake video that was up, music video that was up, him singing Chinese. And then there was this fight scene between Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. It was so good, it freaked Hollywood out. And ByteDance had to take it down and promise Hollywood that they would install some guardrails. And so that's out there.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
But a close second is another Chinese model called Kling AI. And we use it. In fact, we use it to generate ads and things like that. And it's also pretty dang good.
Okay.
I think Seed Dance is like the next revolution in terms of video. And I think Hollywood is right to consider it an existential threat. But Kling AI is pretty good too, the 3.0 model. We've been playing around with that.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Well, so that makes me think of a bunch of questions I did want to ask you. I guess the first being, what do you think the temperature in the room is of everybody's feelings toward all of this? Like you said, it depends who you talk to.
Yeah, very much so.
I feel like actors, I kind of worry for, and singers, but at the same time, I guess I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, and I think, again, I don't want to sound like a lawyer. It depends on who you're talking to at what moment, right? So there's this great interview, a couple of really good interviews, I think, around AI. Like Ben Affleck just did one, and I thought his insight was really good, and you guys can look it up on the internet. But I think, this is just my opinion, that visual effects, sound effects in Hollywood, where people have been used to sort of selling their services or offering the services for a premium, I think those industries are in trouble just because the tech is that good.
Yeah.
And I think any kind of industry where there's sort of like a cast of thousands supporting something in the effects world or any kind of that stuff, I think there's cause for concern.
Yeah.
The temperature here in town, I think, is a little bit split. I think people who create, like songwriters, for example, are right to be concerned about what things like Suno can do.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, that stuff was trained on data that is an IP that is owned by these different sort of groups, especially, and didn't have a say in how all that went down.
Right.
That is a legitimate and valid concern. However, if you were struggling to go make a $300 demo and you had to make 5 demos for a session to make it worth your while, that's $1,500 that you didn't know if that investment was going to work out.
Yeah.
Now you can make those demos inside Suno. Right? Provided, and I want to make a big point about this, provided your mind and your creativity can direct the model to do the thing you want it to do.
Yeah.
For me, in all of these models, audio, video, images, if you don't, and I don't want to reduce it to just saying it's prompt engineering, because it's more than prompt engineering. It's creativity and design. It's who you are as a person that can inform the model to do what you want it to do.
Yeah.
Right? So if you kind of go, because I've done this on Suno, that you kind of go, okay, this is a song I wrote. This is the rough track. Let's add XYZ, this part, that part, because I want to see what it sounds like. And then you listen to the Suno produced product and you kind of go, you know what would be great? I should have a horn section here. Imagine going to a demo session or a tracking session.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you listen to the rough mix and you kind of go, you know what would be great if we had a horn section here? So now you got a schedule.
Right.
You got to figure out what your budget is. And you might say, don't got the budget.
Yeah.
That, and I can hear the people on your podcast going, but that is depriving. And they're right. It is depriving. But the reality is we're all having to do more with less. And for someone who's up and coming, and that's just in the United States, there are entire countries, entire segments of populations who are disadvantaged, who don't have access to the tools that we do, who don't have access to sessions, who don't have access to incredible musicians. And even if they did, they are in a income strata for which this is just not real.
Yeah.
You know? And so I see both sides of the argument, but it's an incredible tool. But I would not try to pass yourself off as an AI artist, or that this is completely organic. You know, I think people deserve to know that.
Yeah.
And the other thing people need to know is, especially with the new deals and agreements that these platforms have made with the labels, all the stuff is now sort of an in-between walled garden. So even if you have a paid subscription with Suno, you don't own the result of your AI-generated content.
Well, so I was going to ask you this.
Yes.
Can you upload anything to streaming services? Because I thought you could.
You can, yeah.
But do you have to like pay out royalties to Suno?
You don't pay out royalties to Suno right now off streaming services.
Okay.
Because they haven't claimed it. But in the new terms of service, they say, we are licensing this result to you.
So they own it.
They own it.
So you don't truly own your masters.
Correct.
Oh.
Yeah.
So even if you have the paid, because for me, I actually found it really empowering to use, as I felt like I was like talking to a producer, which we'll get into the producer AI thing you talked about. But a lot of times I have some, like I have learned how to set up my podcast, which I feel good about. But sometimes with music software, I have a hang up where I don't feel as confident as...
Completely. I'm the same way.
Yeah. So it's like, one day I want to get there. I've always wanted to make beats. Like even when I was like 18, I was like, I'm going to start making beats. Like, it's just like, that's my calling. But I just never did it. And so I can, before I could meet with a producer and tell them my vision for it, what I heard, like bang a drum beat on the couch if I wanted to, but I didn't feel confident behind the computer doing it.
Yeah.
So now I feel like with Suno and other platforms, it kind of cuts out that time with the producer, and instead I can get a really quick, rough draft of what I'm hearing in my head.
Completely.
And that's what I like about it.
Yeah.
But I do see it as something for me that it's almost like I'd be able to test out my idea and then take it to musicians to replace, and then I can still own the master.
Yeah. Yes. This is true.
So I feel like that's how I would want to use it.
Completely. And that would be my workflow if I was to do that. So again, I just think, just know what you're getting yourself into, and also understand that the most important entity and the most important, if you want to call it a commodity, or the most important factor in all this stuff is the creator behind the person using these models, right? And so I can make a case for, I'm going to think at this point, probably about 20 to 30%, probably higher. Like on the streaming services, is completely AI generated, right? None of that stuff is afforded a copyright protection in the U.S. Copyright Office, because if it's completely AI generated, you don't get copyright protection. Okay. And that's one of the people who was trying to make the U.S. Copyright Office confer IP protection on AI-generated content actually took it to the Supreme Court. And that decision came out Friday or Monday. And they said, and the Supreme Court was like, no, the lower courts got it, the Court of Appeals got it right. Wow. So if it's completely AI-generated, then you don't get copyright protection. That's another thing you need to be, you would need to consider. So,
sorry to cut you off. Partial AI generation, is that protected? Correct. Okay.
I'm not sure what the percentage is, but the last number I heard was 50%. So, but don't hold me to that. Okay. Yeah. So it is offered copyright protection to the extent that a human being was involved. If there's no human being, and human being involved does just mean, I'll put this in there, generate a song about XYZ, that doesn't count. Right. So like the Zanaya Monet thing, she claimed she could, Zanaya Monet is this R&B artist that's AI generated by, I think her name is Nikki Owens. She's in Mississippi, and she's a poet.
Okay.
She used AI, generated an artist, generated the voice, used her poetry to create the songs. And this is a big thing on CBS with Gail and all that stuff.
Okay.
And it went to the Billboard charts, top 10 R&B charts. And in fact, I was in California in October, and I was in a Uber, and the Uber driver was playing his radio station. And the song came out, and I said, oh, that's AI. He goes, AI? He didn't know, right? He goes, sounds better than most of the things I listen to, you know? So she's on the charts, got a $3 million record label deal. But yeah, I hate to say it's inevitable, but it's inevitable.
Organically, it sounds even weird to use that word talking about this, but I heard a song on Instagram Reels.
Yeah.
It's called Soft Girl Era.
Okay.
And it's an R&B track by Una Serene or something. And I was like, oh, what an interesting name. Like, completely over my head.
Yeah.
Fell in love with the song. Liked it so much. I think I listened to it. Like, when I love a song, I could listen 500 times a day, like over and over and over.
Yeah.
I learned the
like
song.
10-Year Town. Yeah.
Your sister. I learned the song. I actually covered it. Looked her up online. I'm like, okay, there's a little bit of a social thing going, but I don't know what's going on here. I put up a little like short cover of it. And then I realized, oh my God, I just covered an AI artist. I had no idea. And I felt like, I was like, am I just crazy? Like, it was just so something
Blanco Brown just did it.
And he didn't realize he did it?
No. He completely knew.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So Blanco Brown just covered, I think, Breaking Rust.
Okay. Oh, the one that was on the Billboard charts.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Anyway, so where were we before the cameras died? But it's sort of like a tradition here on the podcast. You started to mention the data centers that are
resource utilization.
Yeah. So I just read something about this small farm town, and Elon Musk has put some kind of data center there, and it's very noisy, and so there's like fears around what's going to happen with how to actually make all this stuff happen, because it requires a lot of energy, right?
Completely.
Okay.
And it is inefficient, and it does use a ton of energy, and so much so that at scale now, because there are so many AI companies, different, and they're all different. So like Google has an AI initiative. OpenAI has an AI initiative. So does Anthropic, and the Musk thing. And they're all they're definitely overutilizing resources.
Okay.
So much so that I think the power grid in the United States is going to have a come to Jesus moment about all that stuff. That being said, it's way early, and I think the irony of all this stuff will be is that I think AI will solve the energy issue, right? Because it's resource management, and it's logistics, and it's because right now everybody's just running GPUs, like stacking GPUs.
What is a GPU?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Graphics processor units.
Okay.
So NVIDIA, for example, is a GPU company.
Oh, okay.
Right? So all those GPU cards, they are what makes AI, the underlying hardware.
Right. Okay.
And because they generate heat, so each card generates heat, just like your camera generates heat. Any piece of electronics generates heat. So you put those things in a room, then all of a sudden, with a whole bunch of these things in a room, it gets really hot. And so most of the deficit or the electrical one is to run the hardware, right? Just the raw electric consumption to run those GPUs. The other big thing is water to cool those facilities. Or if you're running air conditioning, that also takes water, right? All those things, like, it's not hard to imagine all the same things that cool your home are sort of like being used accept at a massive scale in these facilities. So beyond just the initial building of these facilities, which uses up resources, when you have those whole collection of GPUs that are generating heat, you need to cool them down so they don't burn out. And then there are different mechanisms that people use. And so that's where our electrical consumption comes from, not just from running those GPUs, but to cool them. And I think different companies have different approaches to that. So like OpenAI, for example, for the most part, I don't think their servers, like, and because of the noise, like you were talking about in this rural Mississippi town, that keeps people up. It affects their quality of life.
Yeah.
But some of these guys don't care about what that does to communities or whichever, right? I think, and maybe it's just wishful thinking, and I'm sure the comment section will reflect that, is that I think eventually some of these LLMs and some of these AI algorithms are going to figure out, oh, in order for me to run better, I need to be more efficient about how to utilize these hardware.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, I think that's where we are.
Yeah. That just reminded me, I have been thinking about the Music City tunnel.
Yes.
With the construction of that, which looks like it's going to be happening, do you think that's going to be noisy? If it's underground?
Tunnel?
Like, I'm just wondering, like, what are the effects of the building process of that going to be?
To be quite honest, I don't know.
Yeah.
We were in Vegas last year and at the convention center, and they have a tunnel. It goes from one end of the convention center to the other end of the convention center that uses those Teslas and they drive in the tunnel.
Wow.
I don't know why it's in the tunnel, but there it is.
Yeah.
You know? And so do I think it's going to affect our environment? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're drilling. The other thing that I don't understand, and someone needs to explain this to me, is why they're doing it here. Because you can't even build a basement in Tennessee because our bedrock is so hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like it's, yeah. So
if they want to build some tornado shelters, I'm down. Right. Yeah.
So
did you give me that look because you're like, why haven't they done that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if we have a priority in this town,
right,
in the state of Tennessee, or actually anywhere in Tornado Alley, which we aren't quite in Tornado Alley, but we're adjacent, we need basements.
Yeah.
You know? And people don't build houses with basements anymore. We have a split level. And even, I'm told even that was like a big deal. You know? And so, but yeah, I don't think our biggest need was a boring tunnel. And I love the fact that it's called a boring
tunnel. Yeah. The boring company, right. Yeah. I didn't mean to veer off topic, but I just wanted your opinion on that. Anyway, let me make sure we've hit everything today. So I wanted to also ask you, in terms of jobs that might be impacted music-wise, and also any field that you think might be impacted by AI, what are you thinking at this point?
Yeah, you know, it's hard to predict. I think, again, we're still early, and it is going to affect everything our life touches, you know? Like, for me personally, the way I first found out about AI in general was through AlphaFold, which is this big biomedical project that solved protein structure in the space of about 6 months, when I know projects where a grad student was working for like 5 years. Right, on one single structure and part of the structure. And so to me, that was huge because it has huge implications in medicine and things like that. So that has an effect in the biomedical field, right? For me, that is now, people who work in pharmacology or biomedical research now have access to data. That's a positive effect.
Yeah.
Structural biologists might have a different opinion of that because now they're like, we have to pivot and figure out what we're going to do for structural biology. In the creative arts, you know, I think it's going to have a massive effect But I would also argue that streaming had a massive effect. You know, not all of it positive.
Yeah.
But in the early days of streaming and Spotify, and I'll die on this hill, is that the folks at Spotify back before the IPO genuinely loved artists, loved music, and wanted to support it. And there's this interview online now with Mike Begain, who was one of the early people with the content team or the editorial team, Doug Ford being the other, and Meg Tarquinino, and then later on a little bit John Butler, who's still here in town. They were all genuine music fans and wanted to disrupt the system. They basically wanted to disrupt radio, right? And so they built the system, the editorial system, to be more egalitarian about the thing. And then the whole thing switched at the IPO because then now, we have to make money because we've got stockholders, right?
Okay.
And then you can kind of see all the people who really cared about music started leaving one by one. You know,
I've never doubted that the people in there care about music, like from the editorial team, like that. You know, I've never thought about that way, and I didn't realize they were like leaving one by one.
It was that was a slow bleed there in a second, and then with every change, with every regime, everybody wants to bring in their own team.
Yeah,
but there's this Mike Begain interview that I think anyone, regardless of your perspective on what streaming is or isn't, especially at Spotify, in the early years, it was a beautiful time. Just a beautiful time. And it was so fun to talk to those people about music because they genuinely cared and to kind of like have an idea of how their brains worked and how the editorial system worked. And, anyway, all this to say that we're going to go through a reckoning right now. There's going to be a recalibration of what it means to produce music. And, I have a tough time thinking or believing that, I'm going to throw out his name because he's a friend and I just think the world of him, like someone like a Brendan Bell who engineers and mixes and produces music for people like Brandy Carlisle and for Alison Russell and for Billy Strings. I don't care what anyone says. The people like Billy Strings, for that matter, no AI is going to replicate and duplicate that. So,
and the people that love him don't want that. Yeah.
And I mean, that's actually true because there was this whole thing where they had a company do some cover art or design T-shirts and they used AI to generate the graphics. And his fans found out, like he didn't even know.
Oh my gosh.
And
they
then
detected
they just
it.
Lost it. Yeah.
They were the fingerprint. That's crazy.
Which is an important point. Humans are going to be great at creativity and humans are going to be great at detecting bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? So
that's my favorite thing to detect, personally. Maybe not with songs AI, but I love my bullshit detector is pretty high most of the time.
So I think people who are genuinely good at their jobs and who kind of like figure out how to incorporate some of these tools into their workflow are going to be not maybe fine, but they're going to have to figure out. They'll have a longer runway than someone who's like, oh, no.
Yeah.
I sell you widgets and now AI makes us widgets.
Right.
Well,
and like, I don't know if you follow Gary Vee at all, but he makes a good point about how with the rise in AI and technology, like analog is coming back in a way. Like people want to be around people because they're kind of overwhelmed by all of this new stuff. And so
I was at the Bluebird last night. I worked with Claire Kelly and, she put together a fabulous round last night.
Did you play last night?
I didn't play.
Oh, okay. I know you play there, right?
Yeah, I play
pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're very kind. So Claire put together a round with Bandana Cheyenne, Racine Parker, and Scarlett. And it was just this amazing human experience.
Yeah.
You can't replicate that. I mean, we all have concerns, right? And I think some of those concerns are valid. But experiences like that are going to be, I think, like to your point, those kinds of experiences, craftspeople who build things with their hands, I think all that stuff is going to jack up in value.
Yeah.
You know?
I think you're right.
Yeah. I think the recalibration is going to be around, oh, what do we charge for this? Or how do we market it? Or, you know, and books.
Yeah.
You know? My daughter is very funny, and because she's of us, she refuses to touch any kind of AI tool. Right. But yeah. So, and she's in theater. She's working tech in theater. And she is responsible for making sure everybody hits the cue, you know, and managing the logistics of the experience. I mean, there are some things, and I can totally relate. A lot of these things that are human made and creator made or creator driven are sacred things. Yeah. You know, and to a lot of us, whether a machine can replicate that or not, it's going to be, I think, up for us to figure out and see if it happens. Yeah. That being said, some of these models are incredible. Yeah.
But to your point, if we're the ones training them, they are us.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you train somebody to do your job, does that make them you?
No, you're right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, like if I was to go out and say, okay, here's all of Emma White's songs. Yeah. Go write like her. Yeah. First of all, why are we doing that? Yeah. You know, because there's already Emma White. Yeah. Wouldn't we want to like train something completely unique? Right. You know, and create something.
You're right. They could never fully be you.
Yeah. I mean, they can do a fairly good approximation. I mean, we see that all the time on Music Row, right? Yeah. Oh, so-and-so had a hit. Let's see if we can get another artist with like sounds like that. Yeah. We don't need AI to do that. We do a pretty good job.
The fact that even ChatGPT, like for a while I said ChatGPT is my best friend because like the empathy, the
4.0 was pretty amazing.
The emotional like intelligence of the AI tools is kind of
AI, the emotional support AI.
It's like, wow, you're really making me feel great about myself. Yeah, but right. It's interesting because it does seem like, oh, wow, you could transfer that to writing a song and like put in all the feels that you need to put in.
And, you know, I know how people feel about this, but one of the things I did while I was doing a presentation in an online Zoom class was that I just had a gander to do something. And I was like, oh, what would happen if? And so at that point, I think it was ChatGPT 03. I asked it to do research about the top 10 hits on the Billboard charts in country for the last 3 years. And it went out and did the research and said, these are the songs. And then I said, what are the common elements with these songs?
Oh, wow.
And then it came back and said, da, 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 da. I said, great, write me a lyric around that stuff. And it came back and wrote me a lyric. Now, taking that lyric into a writing room here and offering it as your work, I think people would laugh at it because it was not really, the lyrics weren't great. Yeah. But it sort of like checked all the boxes to some extent. I then took that lyric and put it in Suno, and it came out with a pretty decent song. And someone I know who works in publishing, oh, I'd sign that.
Wow. So that, okay, now I have, more questions, but I won't spend too long on them. But so if writers are using AI to come up with lyric ideas in their songwriting sessions, do they have to somewhere be transparent or forthcoming about that once the song is done?
That's an interesting question, Emma White. I'm not sure I have the answer to that.
I just think you're all knowing, so I'm just asking you everything.
I'm not God.
I'm also probably thinking I'm overthinking it a bit.
No, I don't think you're overthinking it. I think you're thinking about the way it should be thought about, which is what happens if a writer turns in a song that was partially AI generated, and maybe now we don't have a mechanism to detect that particular contribution. But I think as time goes on, we're going to, Google, for example, already embeds synth ID in images and video. So I suspect pretty soon here, maybe the next couple of years, if not sooner, there'll be other kinds of digital signatures embedded into AI generated content. And so at that point, does your publisher or your record label run a detector across all your work because they just don't trust that you didn't use AI?
And then at some point, there's only so many ideas in the world. It's like things may overlap, even if you didn't intend to copy or take from or.
And that happens in real life.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
yeah.
I could go down that rabbit hole. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think some of the same opportunities and some of the same innovations that happen in the analog world are going to happen in AI.
Yeah.
And I think some of the same challenges and abuses and misuses that happen in the analog world are going to happen in AI.
Right.
It's just going to be a reflection of us.
Right.
Right.
So this is my last and final question. Thank you for being here, spending so much time.
Thank you for having me.
Are there any new AI apps or programs that you are excited about?
Yeah. I have to say, I think this year it's going to be the year that AI video is going to be unhinged. I just think the models are so good. We're not even at the end of the first quarter. And it's just, these models are stunning, And by the end of the year, like by Christmas, I think we're going to be drowning in AI slop. And I know that phrase is used derogatorily, but I just mean that it's going to be tons of content.
Yeah.
And we're going to be drowning in it, and we're going to have to figure out how to differentiate it.
Because there's no guardrails, really.
There's no guardrails. Yeah. And in the United States, there aren't going to be guardrails for a while. Like Europe and the EU has some, but guardrails are rails. It doesn't really stop people from creating stuff.
Yeah.
It's all going to be punitive and after the fact. The fact that you can put out content and then someone says, "Oh no, you can't have that," the content's already out there,
right?
And so I'm simultaneously excited about some of these video tools and AI models, and also terrified by them because I've seen what they can do. And it's not hard to circumvent some of the built-in guardrails. All of them have to some extent guardrails built into them because they have to. So there's that. In terms of tools, I would say, to get my soapbox a little bit, you should drop ChatGPT.
Okay.
If you're using it. Because I think their business practices are suspect. And not that I think that Anthropic is that much better. But at least they have a CEO who has a conscience. Dario Amade is one of my favorite tech people, and I think he tries to do the right thing. So I would go read his Substack and go read watch his videos because he has some really insightful things to say. And if you want to be educated about that stuff, Anthropic is a great platform. Above and beyond, you don't have to use the model, but if you want to learn about what AI and LLMs do and different things do, it's a great platform. They even have free courses to learn about this stuff. Okay. Again, staying with Anthropic, I think their Claude Cowork platform is really revolutionary. I think it can do, as close to digital magic as we can. And for the creatives out there who've always been afraid to dabble in software engineering, here is your opportunity. There's some great platforms. Again, Claude Code and Claude Cowork can do a lot of stuff. You can dream up things you wish you had. And there's also a platform called Lovable that will let you code pretty easily. In fact, I saw a producer friend sort of code something because he had to use like 7 disparate software platforms to manage his life for production. And he built it out in I think 2 days or something. Wow. And now it's managing his logistics. The producer AI thing is interesting because it was a standalone platform called Refusion before this, and it was really powerful from the AI audio model. And what Google has done is acquired the platform, and they have their own audio model called Lyria, and Lyria now is in version 3. And so And the power of Google acquiring that platform, I don't think it literally sounds as good as, and even Producer AI doesn't sound as good as Suno to my ears. But they are being absorbed into probably the biggest tech company in the world. And Google has access to VO3, which is a video model, and they've got access to Gemini, which is the LLM, and they've got access to Nano Banana, which is their image. And I think that's a very powerful bundle to sort of, and I think they kind of felt left out in the AI audio game. And so they've acquired Producer AI to help with that. Again, not super thrilled about the quality of the audio, although it's good. Like, it's still like a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old wrote a song, whereas I think Suno is much more mature.
Okay.
But between now and the end of the year, who knows? The Producer AI is going to have access to all the data that Google has.
Right.
So the retraining will probably be pretty significant.
And like you said before, Google is potentially going to own everything, and they'll own those songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's going to depend how they, and they'll have synth ID on those things and whatever. Yeah, it's really a challenge to look past what the video models can do, because they really are that good. I would be interested to see and monitor what the DSPs do with AI, because Spotify has already come out and said we're going to allow AI generated content. But just how they monitor and how they segment it, are they going to inform the general public about that kind of content? That all remains to be seen.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
If anyone wants to keep up with you, where should they go find you and ViNIL?
Yes. So I can be reached at Charles at ViNIL, and that's spelled ViNIL, which stands for Voice Identity, Name, Image, Likeness, .me.
Okay.
ViNIL has a Instagram. I have an Instagram, and it's more than just about music and tech. And that particular handle is Songsponge, SONGSPONGE. But most of the stuff and the conversations around AI and tech and music that I have online are on my LinkedIn. So just follow Charles Alexander on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
And ViNIL is, again, ViNIL, ViNIL.me on Instagram as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emma.
Appreciate you.
You're the best.
In my 30s